You are listening to the CBER Lunchbox Podcast. Hi everyone, and welcome to the CBER Lunchbox Podcast. My name is Charlie Outhwaite, and with me today I have the awesome Carolyn Thompson, who is a primatologist and PhD student at UCL and ZSL. So welcome, Carolyn. How are you doing today?
All good here, Charlie. Thanks so much for having me. This is already a lot of fun.
Awesome. Great to have you. So we have some little easy questions to get you going. So as you come into our podcast today, so I feel like I know what the answer is going to be for this one. As I just said, you're a primatologist, but can you tell me what your favorite species or group of species are and what it is that makes them so special?
That's an easy one. Obviously it's gibbons. So gibbons, for anyone who doesn't know, are the smallest of the apes. And I just think they're the bee's knees. They are the singing swingers of the rainforest world. There are 20 species in total. And
Wow.
I think what makes them so special is that they have this beautiful ability to sing. And if you ever hear a gibbon song, it's like this haunting, really mystical, beautiful, magical song that basically carries across the rainforest. Sadly, 19 of the 20 species are on the brink of extinction, which is why I was really interested in them in the first place.
Wow, that is bad news. I won't ask you to do an impression of their song today, though.
Oh, we can.
Oh, go on.
Well, obviously, each of the 20 species has a different song, but this is the Southern Bornean gibbon. This is the female's great call.
Yes.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
Amazing.
I'm sure people are listening are like, this person's such a nutter.
No, they don't know. There's actually a gibbon here live right now. So
living in my house.
Amazing. And that's a great noise. So when do they make that kind of call? Is that just to let each other know they're there? Is that a specific kind of call?
Yes, so they normally sing first thing in the morning, and it's basically to reinforce their territories, also to advertise to potential mates, maybe to reinforce bonds within their small family groups as well. But they will often do vocalizations as well if they have like a group encounter during the middle of the day. But normally, like I said, you'll hear these vocalizations first thing in the morning, which is, I think, just a great way to start the day, out trekking, following wild gibbons.
Yeah, and it sounds amazing. So I can imagine then that your favorite place to work will be where we can find these gibbons.
Definitely one of them. So I guess in my career, I've been quite fortunate. I've worked across Asia, Africa. I've also done some stuff in Panama, but I would say China and Indonesia are definitely my favorite places. And you do find gibbons there, coincidentally. But I think mainly because of the people. The people are just fantastic. They're so friendly. They're so personable. The food is incredible. It's like a culinary adventure. And obviously the landscapes in both of these countries is absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah. Oh, you must be missing going out in the field right now.
Oh, I am. Well, luckily I'm in the Wye Valley, so I know it's not quite Chinese montane forest or Indonesian peat swamp forest, but the Forest of Dean is still pretty lovely, just lacking in some gibbons.
Yeah, definitely something good around here. Amazing. So when you're not working then, what's your favorite place to travel for fun?
So I'm half Swiss, so I guess I would have to say Switzerland. We do go traveling and hiking in the Alps every year, and that's been a family tradition since my grandmother was a small child. We've been going back to the same place. But I do have some favorite countries on my list as well. Ethiopia's up there, Nepal, Madagascar, Iceland. I guess anywhere with like beautiful nature and obviously where you can really immerse yourself in different cultures and things like that. I just absolutely adore it.
Amazing. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be back out traveling very soon.
Fingers crossed, that's a dream.
That is the dream right now. Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, thinking more about your kind of journey into science now. So you're doing your PhD now, but I know you've had quite an interesting journey into science. So can you tell us a little bit about the things you've done and how you got to where you are now?
So interestingly, at school, I was told not to study anything with science and maths because they were not my strong points. Yes, very supportive there. And that threw me initially because obviously it was well-meant advice, but I started off doing an undergraduate degree in geography, and I quickly realized that was not my calling and not what I really wanted to be doing. So cut a very long story short, I ended up doing a second undergraduate with the Open University, and that was in life sciences. So that gave me a really nice biology base, but it was just a fantastic way of learning. It's obviously distance learning, but I was just able to work full-time in a job, earn money, obviously doing my degree as well. And then I would go off and travel and try and get as much hands-on experience in conservation, especially in primate conservation. And I really think that that's what led me on to my journey down the route in primatology, and opened up so many doors for me. It was a brilliant way of learning, and I can't speak more highly of the Open University at all.
Oh, brilliant. That's nice to hear, because you don't often hear about people using the Open University in that way, or finding that distance learning can be quite a challenge for kind of building networks and things, but it sounds like it's works really well.
I think when I started as well, not really showing my age here, but it was not really kind of a mainstream university. Like people didn't really, my age in their early 20s, didn't really go and study with the Open University. And I always thought it would be frowned upon, but actually I met some of the best people working there. So one of my good friends was training to be a pilot alongside doing a science degree. Another one was an opera singer, had a paramedic friend, just people from all walks of life, all different ages, and everyone got on because everyone was there because they loved learning. And it was just a really great, awesome environment to be in. And I really think it brought out the best in me in terms of learning independently.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that. So you said you worked with a lot of different kind of conservation organisations, trying to get experience kind of before getting to where you are now. So I guess was that a lot of volunteer work? And what kind of bits and pieces did you get involved with?
Yes, so I did a lot of kind of hands-on primate keeper work initially, because that's what I thought I wanted to go down into. But then I branched quite quickly into, no pun intended, branched into research. Yeah. I do love a good pun. I branched into research with wild primates quite quickly. And I think, so I did a lot of voluntary work, and then that kind of I stepped up into kind of paid internship positions, and then obviously paid jobs. But I think in conservation, as we all know, everyone who works in this field, there is not a lot of funding. And on top of that, there's a lot of unpaid positions, which actually I don't particularly agree with. So I learned a lot of lessons, shall we say. I worked for some bad organizations, and it taught me a lot about how to be able to spot some of these organizations. And now with the students that I teach, I try and encourage them to steer clear or see the signs of a bad organization and kind of learn from my lessons.
Yeah, that sounds great, because I think you see opportunities come up, and when it's such a different or difficult area to get involved with, you just want to take these opportunities, but then you can find you're really being taken advantage of or asked to do certain things, and it can be very tricky.
Exactly. So I think you need to look at like who's running the organization, like what are their credentials, and are there any proven outputs from the organization, even in the form of reports? It doesn't necessarily have to be publications or necessarily scientific outputs. Are they employing local people? And if you're paying for that position, are you basically having to pay an arm and a leg to be there? And if you are, then I think that, all these things which would be warning bells.
Yeah, so some great advice there for different positions. Excellent. Thank you very much. And so I guess all this kind of experience and knowledge that you gained for these different positions have led you to want to do a PhD and continue in research?
Yes. So my second job outside of my master's. So I did a master's specializing in primatology, and it was a master's by research. So it was really like hands-on project work. Absolutely loved it. And so my first job was in Indonesian Borneo, working in a peat swamp forest. And that, it was incredible. And that's where I fell in love with gibbons for the first time. And to be honest, a PhD was not even on my radar. And it was just while I was there, I started getting more interested in gibbons. And like I said, I realized 19 of the 20 species were on the brink of extinction, yet there's not many gibbonologists, experts studying gibbons worldwide. And on top of that, there have been proven outputs that have shown that actually gibbons are very much underfunded and under-researched as well. So they are considered to be the forgotten apes. So I just thought, okay, well, this is what I want to end up studying, and I may as well do a PhD. It just makes sense. Get those letters after my name as well. And
why not?
Bonus. So yeah, that kind of led me on to that PhD journey.
I mean, if you can do what you love and that gives you an output, that's good.
Yes.
And we can be an advocate for gibbons, so very important stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you actually crowdfunded the money to do your PhD, which is, I think, really impressive for starters, but also very unusual. I know there are kind of self-funded PhDs out there, but crowdfunding is a kind of a new way of raising money. So how did you achieve this, and what kind of drove you into doing this kind of approach?
Oh, Charlie, it was a nightmare. So initially I had not one penny to my name, and nor did my supervisors. So, I applied for big funding bodies for money, and most of them came back and said, we don't support populations below 150 to 200 individuals. And all my gibbon species I study are all below 150 on a global population scale. So that was a big blow. And to be honest, I could understand what they were saying. They were saying we need to put our resources elsewhere with a species that is not so far gone. But on the other hand, I'm not someone to give up. So I was like, we shouldn't give up on them. So exactly. And then sadly, I did try and go through a PhD program route. But to do a lot of these programs, obviously, you need to be not too focused on one particular topic, which I was. So I was told, you are too focused for this type of program. So instead I thought, okay, well, why don't we crowdfund? So I found this amazing animator called Dave McCall. He worked for free, bless him, for the gibbons. And we chose, for the gibbons. We chose one of my species of gibbon, the Skywalker gibbon. Because I guess it was the most sexy of the three, and it was newly described by Science in 2017. And obviously the name is linked to Star Wars. So he made this amazing animation in Star Wars theme, and it had astronomical success. It made more than £18,000, and on top of that, I have about 164 backers who follow my journey, and it's become very, very personal. And it's nice when my backers message me privately to ask how things are going, and they're really interested in the research, and it's made it really worthwhile to know that you have these people who are kind of rooting for you and rooting for the gibbons. It's been a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, wow, that sounds amazing. So I think, doing a PhD can often be quite an isolating experience when you're trying to drive your own work, and obviously you're supported by supervisors, but it's very much an independent activity. So having people that are at least interested and reminding you why you're doing it, it's probably quite nice and encouraging, and help push you through those tough bits as well.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really, very much so. And then I guess on top of that, because I'd secured this money, other big funding bodies, kind of heard about it. The media got hold of it. And then in the end, the Arcus Foundation, they support a lot of ape work. They are now my other massive funder. They support kind of my part-time cost of living and other kind of field trips and associated with my PhD. So it's ended up it has a very positive ending to the story, which is so nice.
Yeah, and well deserved after such a
thank you
push, I'm sure. No, it's all really impressive, really cool.
Thanks, Charlie.
So thinking about, I guess, getting into science and people's journeys into science. So do you have a particularly sciencey family, or what kind of background are you from? Are they very supportive in your kind of fieldwork ambitions, or do they get a bit nervous when you say you're going to these far off places?
My mum especially, yes. I don't tell her all the field stories. I swear I'm on my 9th life. My mum actually collects degrees. She has a degree in biology, psychology, zoology. She just did a history of arts and philosophy degree.
Wow.
She's an absolute brain. And my dad actually is a semi-retired geophysicist. So yes, he's very sciencey. But my sister, we're like chalk and cheese. We're super, super close. But she studied French and linguistics at university. And she now lives in Hong Kong, and she's super badass. She's like the head of Asia for Bloomberg, the big American finance and software company. Yeah, I know.
Impressive.
So I earn nothing, and she's like basically rolling in millions, living her high life in Hong Kong.
I'm sure she can fund the Gibbons. I mean,
she does. She's one of my biggest supporters, bless her. So
amazing. No, family are great, especially when they can see you're inspired by something.
Definitely, you're right.
So we won't tell your mum the fieldwork stories then, but can you tell us some of your fieldwork stories? So what does your fieldwork generally involve, and what's it like working abroad for long periods of time?
So I guess my type of research is split into kind of two areas. So the first half is following primates. And when you follow wild gibbons, you have to get up really, really early. You get up at like 3 to 4 a.m., depending on the species you're studying. Some do get up a little bit later, especially in China where it's a bit colder. So that's always nice.
Thanks for the lion.
Yes. And then normally you would follow your wild primate from the moment it wakes up to the moment it goes to sleep in its sleeping tree, or if it's a case of an orangutan making its nest. And you're on your feet the whole day. It's really exciting. You're constantly seeing all different types of animals. Obviously, you're learning about all different types of vegetation that they're feeding on. You're recording all different types of behavior. I mean, I absolutely love it. I thrive in that environment. And then the other half of my PhD is actually spent working with local people. And when I first started my PhD journey, I thought I wouldn't like that area as much as kind of the primate behavioral work. But actually,
it can be tricky.
Yes, especially when you are not fluent in the language. But no, I absolutely love it. And I think I like it as much as doing, obviously, the primate behavior work. So I basically go and live in villages, and I'll immerse myself into the way of life there, like get involved with cooking, like local dancing, all different types of things, go visit the schools. And I basically will just spend my days going around the village and kind of writing ethnographic notes or interviewing people more formally. It's really, really wonderful.
Amazing. And how do the people kind of, do they interact with the gibbons at all? Are they kind of considered a pest in some areas, or are they very much kind of more revered?
So in China, it's a very interesting case because there have been stories about gibbons which date back to something like 200 BC. Wow. And they were originally seen as kind of these very mythical, magical beings who were seen as elite gentlemen almost. And it was what humans kind of aspired to become. And so that's something I've been very interested in, is how these traditional stories have changed over time, because we know that there's obviously been heavy hunting of gibbons over the past, several thousand years, and that's why we've seen a huge decline in population numbers, and obviously that coupled with habitat loss. But I'd say a lot of those traditional stories have been lost, and that's a shame. So we're trying to reintroduce some of those stories back into some of these communities with some local NGOs. But overall, I think a lot of people find the gibbons really special. They feel very privileged that the gibbons are really close to their villages. I mean, not everyone thinks like this. Like I did interview one guy who we had the best interview. We were both crying with laughter because we just had completely different views. So he was saying he couldn't understand why I was studying the gibbons. He was like, they're so ugly, but he's like, they taste so good. He's like, I love eating them. He's like, why would you want to protect them? Yeah. So actually that sticks in my mind as one of my favorite interviews, just because we had a lot of fun with it. And I think as a good kind of ethno-primatologist, someone who's kind of studying people and primate kind of relationships, I think you need to put kind of your own views aside and just, absorb someone else's story and their kind of opinions and attitudes. And when you do that, you kind of reach a new level of almost like enlightenment in terms of your particular study area and in terms of the conservation context as well. So definitely hands down my favorite interview.
Amazing. I guess you've got to take different people's points of view on board. You're not going to change people's mind when they've been living with these things for their whole life and generations. You've just got to kind of accept and try to understand how they feel and why they feel that way.
Yes.
Tricky. Awesome. So, wow, I mean, you've obviously worked in lots of different places. You've managed to do lots of different things. So have you got any kind of awesome people or co-workers that stick out in your mind that you've had the opportunity to work with, or worked with any just awesome people in general?
I've worked with a lot of awesome people. I would say when I worked in Borneo, the staff from the Borneo Nature Foundation were absolutely brilliant. Like, I've never laughed so much. And they were a Dayak community, so it's that kind of a tribe community in Kalimantan, and their culture is just so rich and bright and colourful, exactly like their personalities. So it was a lot of fun working with them. And then obviously, I guess you're asking more about big names in academia. One of my idols.
Get a big name in.
Well, one of my personal idols was Professor Fan Panfei. He works in China, and happens to be one of my supervisors as well. I was so excited when he joined my team, but he's like the gibbon guy of China, and he's fantastic. But wow. In terms of even bigger names, I wrote a children's book back in 2015 with the Borneo Nature Foundation. It was very much a team effort, and it was about forest fires and the impact on gibbons and their singing. And David Attenborough got wind of this, and he like made this really cute YouTube video where he encouraged people to support BNF and buy the book and support the story and to support firefighting efforts in the region. So that was really amazing.
Oh, fantastic. That's amazing. Yeah. So what was the book called? What was it about?
It's called The Little Gibbon Who Lost His Song, and it's based on scientific evidence that in smoky conditions, gibbons do not sing. And like I mentioned, gibbon's song is really important for reinforcing social bonds and behaviors. So every year in Indonesia and across Malaysia as well, there are often fires. Some are natural, but many of them are man-made, and they can literally blaze out of control, especially in southern Borneo, where you have peat swamp forests. So peat is basically vegetation that's fallen to the ground, really heavily compressed in like anoxic conditions, so without oxygen, and it forms like this black sludgy matter, but it's also a mass store of carbon. So when you burn peat, you basically are releasing all this carbon into the atmosphere. So it's extremely bad, obviously, for the environment, for global warming, everything, and for the people who live there. It's very toxic. So the book is based on that, really. It's to try and encourage people to pay more attention to not letting those fires get out of control, and also to understand what animals exist in the forest next to where they live, because many of these local communities in Indonesia don't even know what's in the forest, like across the river from their house.
Oh, wow.
So it's a cute little story.
I think you think, I mean, you think people that live quite close to nature might kind of understand a bit better than, say, like us lot in cities who don't get to see nature so up close, that they might have a better understanding. So it's quite interesting to hear that they might not understand what they've got over the river, kind of thing.
Yes. And I think, as you know, a lot of our research does say that the closer the community is to, let's say, gibbon habitat, the greater the awareness. But I would say that's not always the case in different areas or different countries where you get kind of gibbons and other, obviously, other animals as well. So I think it is important that we do that type of research to see where there are gaps in knowledge, so we can try and fill them in, you know, with things like tools like storybooks, and storytelling can be actually quite powerful.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's great. Amazing. Okay, so let's think about outside of work now. What kind of things do you like to do to help take your mind off of work? We at CBER think that work-life balance is very important, so we like to try and hear what people like to get up to outside of the office.
So I absolutely love hiking. So obviously, being in the Forest of Dean in the Wye Valley, there's lots of hiking opportunities. It's just great. And on top of that, I really like creative writing. I love writing a lot, which obviously is good when you're doing a PhD. There's a lot of writing to do with a PhD. So I've been working on a kind of a fieldwork fail book. So that's been a lot of fun and a nice distraction. And, you know, whether it's publishable or not, I don't know. It was never written for that reason, but it's more for me to remember kind of my fieldwork fails and stuff that I've done.
Yeah, I mean, you've had so many great experiences. You need to record these somewhere, even if it's just for your own kind of memory. That's
yes,
great.
Yes.
So can we have an example of one then? Can we have a fieldwork fail?
So many fails. I don't know which one you want. What's happened to me? I've been reported as a terrorist on a border with China and Myanmar. I've always had my head bitten by a black mamba snake. In fact, 2 of my students have actually been bitten on the head in the same morning by a pit viper. Got
Twice
ghost stories. Yeah. Literally everything that possibly could happen, I feel like it happens to me. I've been mauled by a baboon. I've almost drowned. I've tripped over a sun bear on the way to an orangutan nest. I mean, thank God it didn't.
There. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Well, yeah, you've sold the book to me now. Sign me up.
Fabulous. You get a signed copy.
That sounds brilliant. I guess just one last question then, if that's okay. Do you have any advice for anyone who perhaps knows what they want to do, similar to you, but perhaps doesn't know or can't see the pathway to get there?
I think this is a really good question, Charlie. And I think, you know, this is an area where loads of people struggle. It's exactly that. How do you connect the dots from A to B? I think, first of all, I would say always follow your gut instincts. And I wish I'd followed mine a little bit sooner because, for example, I always knew I wanted to study science. And just because I wasn't the best at it in school doesn't mean you're not going to excel maybe at it further down the line. Like now I lecture in science topics. So I feel like the well-meant advice actually kind of made me meander away from what I really wanted to do. So I would say stick to your gut instincts. The other thing I would really suggest is to network widely. So don't be afraid to ask people for advice. Like go to conferences and join random events going on at university, even if it seems a little bit outside your comfort zone, just to kind of meet new people, and so many new doors will be opened. And that's exactly what happened to me, and I'm sure other people will agree with this, that I've ended up meeting so many different people that ended up introducing me to someone else who ended up giving me, you know, a large body of funding, or, you know, wanted to record a documentary, which ended up, you know, getting Gibbons were more spoken about in that area. Something, you know, there's always some networking opportunity. So I think that's what I would encourage. And don't be deterred by, you know, a door being slammed in your face, because there's always another one open.
Yeah, perseverance is key. That
Agreed.
Sounds like great advice. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Kaz. It's been really fun. I've learned a lot about gibbons and fieldwork. So that's amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fab.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Definitely.